This is All India Radio. Now we bring you an exclusive interview with Farid Mamundzay, the Ambassador of Islamic Republic of Afghanistan to India. Interviewer is Dr. ATUL TIWARI, AIR Special Correspondent.
Namaskar and welcome. Today we have with us the Ambassador of Afghanistan in India, His Excellency Farid Mamundzay. He took over as the Ambassador of Afghanistan to India in March 2021. In his previous assignment, Ambassador Mamundzay has served as an advisor to the Afghanistan Minister of Foreign Affairs during 2020 to 2021. He has also worked as a senior political advisor at the National Security Council of Afghanistan during 2016 till 2019. In addition, he has served as Deputy Director General for Policy and Technical Affairs at the Independent Directorate of Local Governance in Afghanistan from 2011 to 2015. Ambassador Mamundzay has worked for several UN and international development agencies as a consultant. He holds a master's degree in international accounting and finance from the University of Birmingham. He has published several articles for academic journals on governance and development studies. Welcome once again to our show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Ambassador, when you took over as the Afghan envoy to India, your first tweet said it all. India is a generous neighbor who has stood with Afghanistan in difficult times and have shared their bread with us. Your thoughts for our listeners?
Well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to come to this historic building today and speak to your good self and be on All India Radio, a radio service that we have been listening to for many years in Afghanistan. And the tweet that you just talked about is an example of that generosity that India has always displayed. India has stood by us in thick and thin and always provided us with the support that we required, not only in the spectrum of security and defense, but also the economic assistance, the development help, the humanitarian support that we are currently receiving, all those generosity or acts of generosity that India has extended in the past 20 plus years now. We are very grateful for the generous support extended by every government in New Delhi from 2001 onward, and more importantly, the historic connect between our people has been always there, has always been strong. I hope that this relation would get even more stronger in the years ahead, in the years to come, and I pray for even more better bilateral ties under these difficult circumstances.
As you said so, difficult circumstances. As the events unfold around us, we can see Afghanistan passing through a difficult phase indeed. A change of guard, shortage of food grains, and economy in duress. How do you look at the current situation and what could be the way forward?
The current situation is very dire. We are going through a very difficult time. As a nation, we are facing a free fall of our political structures. We are facing a free fall of the economy and a free fall of our social fabric. It is indeed a difficult time for the entire country. We hope, the nation hopes, that the next few months prove to be somewhat different in terms of forming a government which would be acceptable to all Afghans. Our senior leaders like President Karzai, Dr. Abdullah, former Senate Speaker Mr. Muslim Yar, and many others are still in Kabul. They are still present there, and they are hoping that there would be some common sense prevailed among senior Taliban figure to consider shaping an inclusive government which would include all political parties, all ethnic groups, and would hopefully allow the political process to take place where we could get international recognition.
Ambassador, really nice to hear from you a positive outlook in the times to come and time frame down the line where we can see the situation improving for a better and new Afghanistan. As we might recall, the international community has called the formation of a truly inclusive government in Afghanistan, and it has said that for a lasting peace, what is required is the elimination of UN Security Council proscribed terror groups. It has also urged the Taliban government to take actions in line with the outcomes of all international and regional mechanisms on Afghanistan and at UN institutions. It has also asserted that Afghanistan's soil should not be used to threaten or to attack any other country to say so. How would you react to this proposition, sir?
That's a very valid point that you touched on. Afghanistan has been suffering from the menaces of terrorism for the past almost 30 odd years. There has been the presence of international foreign fighters in our country. There are 20 internationally designated terrorist outlets operating in Afghanistan. So we don't want to be perpetual victims of a foreign imposed situation where our people are giving sacrifices for something that doesn't belong to us. Terrorism is not a homegrown phenomena in Afghanistan. It has been an imported phenomena in our country. This is important. Terrorism doesn't only threaten the way we live or to our lives, but terrorism is a serious danger to regional stability and regional security. And also, it is a threat to the security and stability of countries beyond this region. So, core of the issue here is again having a government in place which is accountable, which is transparent. And that accountability and transparency would only be possible when there is inclusivity. Once we have an inclusive government, there would be balance and checks. And after ensuring those balances and checks, we can ensure that there is no presence of foreign fighters. Afghanistan soil is then made sure that it is not used against any country in the region.
Ambassador, you spoke about having an inclusive, a reasonable, a rational regime which really proscribes to the democratic values and to see to it that whatever gains which Afghanistan has seen over the past 20 decades is not undermined, right? So what have been the gains which have really lost currency in this dispensation?
There has been a lot of political gain, or rather gains, in the past 20 years. We drafted our first modern constitution back in 2002 and 2003. Afghanistan was able to make a constitution which protected the rights of every citizen, every ethnic group. There has been a lot of nationwide consultation. Compare that the duration that took India to form a constitution. Secondly, we had the first ever democratically held election in our history. A proud history of 275 years almost. We have been able to hold the first democratically held election in 2004. And since then we had 4 presidential elections. We had thrice parliamentary elections. We had 4 times provincial councils elections, where decisions were made on democratic principles, where no monopoly of power were allowed by two or by any group or individuals. There was a thriving democratic growth. We were gradually marching towards a state where the rights of all groups, all political thoughts, all political entities were protected by the Constitution. There were no imposed regimes or no imposed ideologies. If people want to adopt to certain ideologies, let that be their choice. As we have that the case in a true democratic system that exists in India to a larger extent. You could be from whatever political affiliation. The Constitution has protected your rights. Now, our biggest loss here is the loss of Constitution. Since the past 6 months, the Constitution has been suspended. And with the suspension with Constitution, there is no president, no parliament, no minister. Our minister used to get vote of confidence from parliament. Today we have ministers, but there is no vote of confidence. There is no elected body. We still hope that Taliban would be able to come up with a political roadmap in the months ahead. And that's what we hear from our international partners, that give it some time for the next 2 to 3 months till April, May.
Ambassador, another issue which comes to the fore is upholding the rights of various groups, be it the women, be it the different ethnic minorities, or be it the vulnerable cross-sections of the society. We saw recently, even during the Oslo talks, that the international agencies and the participants, they have made a clarion call to the Taliban government to see to it that the values of upholding the rights of various groups must be protected, and at the same time the aid which has been given out, it should be distributed in a non-discriminatory manner. What is your take on that?
Well, first, we are a very multi-ethnic country. We have several ethnic groups in the country, and we lived for centuries in perfect peace and harmony. Ethnicity never divided Afghans. Every Afghan would want to have that the case forever, for many more centuries. And the reason for the stability of any government in the past 270 years of our modern history. Whenever there has been longevity in any government, in any regime, one of the key reasons was that there was fair treatment of every group. When any group was not fairly treated, we saw internal instability and eventually the collapse of the system. The recent efforts of the international community is something that we largely welcome. The Afghans wholeheartedly welcome it, because it is those efforts where we feel that some pressure would be applied, and some pressure would be applied to the Taliban to start a process that the Afghans are demanding. The aid that currently flow in around Afghanistan is there, but it is certainly not sufficient enough. We are hearing reports of lack of or shortage of food. We are hearing reports of medicine shortage, winter clothes, and other necessary items. This is the first time in the past 20 years where we are going through a very difficult shortage of supplies. This all could have been managed if there were proper plans in place at the right time. The problem on part of the Taliban was that they had no experience or little experience of governance. We are a very resourceful country. We are an agricultural country. There should be no shortage of food for us. It is a sheer and utter mismanagement on part of today's administration for failing to manage the situation in such a way which change into crisis in a period of 6 months' time. So the aid currently being delivered by the international agencies are claiming that the issue of being fairness, equity are considered. People are receiving those aid irrespective of their ethnic group, religious beliefs, or political affiliation. They claim that they are doing everything that they can to help them. But of course, not everything is being done. We still see reports of people sleeping hungry. The international aid agencies are requesting more resources. They don't have the required infrastructure on ground. So you need a lot of resources to make those resources available and accessible to a population of around 4 crore people, almost 40 million people.
It's quite a daunting task, Ambassador. Listeners, we are in conversation with the Ambassador of Afghanistan to India, Mr. Farid Mamundzay. Coming back to India-Afghanistan relations, Ambassador, India has said that it has been committed to its special friendship with Afghan people, and as we have seen in the past, it has provided over 6 tons of medicines, more than 500,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines, and the supplies of wheat to address the hardships of the people. Well, in the given situation, what are the expectations?
Well, India has stood with us in the most difficult times, not only today, but whenever there were crises. And there are very good and historic reasons for that. We look upon India very favorably, and India look upon Afghanistan very favorably. Today, our expectation from India in 2 large or 2 key areas. One is to continue supporting us in the humanitarian assistance or in the humanitarian domain. India has been generous enough to provide us 5 lakhs or 500,000 COVID vaccines, 6-ton medicine, and the future delivery of 50,000 metric ton of wheat. We need more resources. Afghanistan is a bigger country than that. We recently saw the approval of 200 crore or 2 billion rupees worth of development aid approved by the Indian Parliament and included in the Indian budget for the financial year of 2022 to 2023, for which we are very grateful. That is one area where we seek India's help. Together with that, we seek India's help with the continuation of its development and infrastructure projects. India has initiated a lot of infrastructure projects, and they are for the people of Afghanistan. We want India to continue assisting and completing those projects in the weeks and months ahead. Secondly, so these 2 are the humanitarian and development areas. Secondly, and my third point there is the political support that we seek from India. India is, of course, a very huge regional power, a notable global and emerging power. Through its convening power, through its influence in the region and beyond this region, we want India to be part of the future political dialogue in Afghanistan and support the will and aspiration of the Afghan people. As I said, that we look upon India very favorably, so we have expectation from India to support a free and fair system, a system that would ensure equity among Afghan people. And India has always stood by its democratic and value-based approach. We would want India to continue doing so in the months ahead and be part of all regional forums. In Afghanistan without India, or in India without Afghanistan, is something where the neighborhood policy would never be fulfilled.
Continuing our discussion forward, recently India had offered a supply of 50,000 metric tons of wheat to Afghanistan via Wagah-Atari border. We have seen the proposal was made to Pakistan way back in the month of October. Then the discussions went on, and now probably we might see some favorable and a positive progress in this direction. Can you share some light, if you have some information or details about when can we see the delivery of this supply of wheat to be through to Afghanistan?
We expect that in the month of February we would see the start of this operation, the start of the 50,000 metric ton wheat operation, which would be completed in about a month time. Our expectation is that it would start well before the end of this month. So we are talking about very near future, or rather weeks, and we greatly again appreciate this generous act of India at a very difficult time.
Ambassador, you refer to the developmental partnership between India and Afghanistan, and as we know that over the past couple of years, India has been one of the largest regional donors to Afghanistan. Financial assistance worth $3 billion, more than 500 projects in different sectors, including the local government sectors. Can you share some examples for the benefit of our listeners, some examples which have really made the lives easier for the Afghan people?
Certainly, India has been the fifth largest donor to Afghanistan and the first largest regional donor, with over $3 billion worth of investment made in Afghanistan. From our parliament building to building one of the largest dams and water reservoir in the west of the country, the Friendship Dam, which we named India-Afghanistan Friendship Dam, or the construction of many small-scale projects. We have 34 provinces in the country, and there isn't a single province where India has not executed 1, 2, or 3 projects. From small-scale irrigation to digging deep wells, from building a small bridge to planting many trees in the desert and remote parts of our countries. So India's contribution is very visible across the country. If this $3 billion worth of investment had to be made by any Western country, they required at least 4 or 5 times the amount of money that India managed to achieve with this amount. We have received a 200-kilometer long road between Zaranj and Chabahar. That is a very large infrastructure project that connects us with the deep sea port. And in fact, need to be remembered that we are a landlocked country. Our parliament building is there. We have another dam built in Kabul. There are many other similar projects, many schools being built by India. So India has been part of a very incredible success story in Afghanistan.
The two countries have been strategic partners, and probably one of the first countries with which Afghanistan had a strategic partnership agreement signed way back in 2011 was in India. And add to it our strong historical and cultural links. Your take on carrying forward this legacy of strong India-Afghanistan connect?
We were the first 2 South Asian countries, or 2 SAARC nations, that signed this pact, the Strategic Partnership Agreement. There hasn't been any other country that they had the Strategic Partnership Agreement. We believed on India's neighborhood policy, and we still believe on regionalism and being part of this region. We need to overcome our differences in this region in order to transform the security, the economy of this part of the world. We in India both gained from this partnership. Afghanistan, being a smaller country with a smaller population, was given access to a very huge market, a market of about 1.5 billion people. That agreement gave us a lot of flexibility in the security, defense, economy, and development domains. And it ensured India a great friend right on the doorstep of Central Asia, next to Persia. So that through that SPA, we managed to build on new partnerships. New horizons were touched. The future at present is not very certain, given the condition back in Kabul. We have a government in place which is yet to receive recognition from any country, including India. But one thing that I can tell all listeners is that in the heart of every Afghan, there is a special place for India. And with that special place in our hearts, I think there will be many more strategic partnerships, there will be many more strategic agreements, and there will be many more lifelong or lasting engagements in many of these areas.
The trade and commerce linkages between the two countries. We saw, you mentioned about the 2,000 kilometers road being constructed by India. Then we have seen the progress in terms of Chabahar port. How do you look at the feasibility in terms of using Chabahar as a connecting link for India to Afghanistan and then to the Central Asian republics?
Chabahar is incredibly important port for Afghanistan. We are a landlocked country. The closest port that we have anywhere in this region is Chabahar. Chabahar doesn't even give us access to sea, but it gives us access to the broader world. We export around 5 billion worth of goods, and 1/4 of that goods come to India. Should we have a port which is reliable, which is accessible, that export could double in 2 years' time. It could triple in 5 years' time. Like I said earlier, the economy of the region could transform. Our economies can transform. So it is a very important port for us. It is important for India. It gives India the access to the 5 Central Asian states, where they have a combined population of around 100 million people, economically very resourceful. Iran is then on our doorstep with a population of about 80 million people. Turkey is right next to Iran with a population of, again, 75 million people. So we are talking about 250 million people in very close vicinity. Afghanistan could benefit from it. India could benefit largely from it.
COVID-19, the pandemic has taken a heavy toll. It has cast a shadow on the people, the communities, and the nation. India has suffered, Afghanistan, and so have been many countries. And we saw that the international community came forward to provide a helping hand, and India also reached out to Afghanistan with essential medicines and COVID-19 vaccine. How do you look at this collaboration in healthcare sector in terms of the supply of vaccines? How do you look at India's role in this direction?
India was the first country which delivered us COVID-19 vaccines under its Vaccine Maitri program. We received the first batches of Covaxin and Covishield vaccines from the Serum Institute early last year, at a time when India needed vaccines at home. We were very generously treated by the Indian government, and the Afghans remember that. We still have one of the largest unvaccinated population in the world. We seek support from other UN agencies, other international aid agencies to help deliver the required number of vaccines to us. India alone has done more than any other country for Afghanistan. But of course, it is a disease that requires global effort, and global effort requires some global resources. So I hope that our international partners would come forward and follow the Indian model of assisting Afghanistan.
Ambassador, moving on to a lighter note. When we were young, we used to hear or listen to the stories of the Kabuliwala and the man from the Kabul and the relationship between the two countries, and equally popular have been the songs of the Bollywood amongst the Afghan people. Can you share some light in terms of the popularity, or how popular is the Indian popular culture in Afghanistan?
There may hardly be any Afghan who would have not come across Indian music. Indian music has a special place in our society. We play Indian songs at our weddings, at our parties, because the vibe that we get from Indian music is not there in many other musics, particularly when the music is from Punjab or when it is from Maharashtra, from the Bollywood. So we, in our older generation, were very fond of the late Lata Mangeshkar ji. They were very fond of Jagjit Singh ji. So this is passed on from one generation to another generation. Our younger generation now, of course, they follow the most advanced or the modern Indian music, from rock to hip-hop, from classical music to ghazals. That exist. I think the similarity in our poetry, the similarity in our music has been there for centuries. People like Rabindranath Tagore ji, he's been a key influencer among our modern poets. So if you look at the poetry of Ghani Khan, the son of Bacha Khan or Abdul Ghaffar Khan, he was greatly influenced by Rabindranath Tagore. This has become part of our music culture.
Ambassador, you have been in India for more than a year. What fascinates you most about India? And I also heard that you are quite adept in quite a few languages. So if you can share some of your popular musical numbers or the popular Indian cuisine during your stay in India?
I have been here for almost a year. It has been a wonderful year living and working in India. India, I don't treat it as my second home. I treat it as my first home. There is no distinction, no difference between Kabul and Delhi to us, or to me in this particular case. I have made a lot of friends. What I like the most about India is the warmth, the affection, and the gratitude that I receive from common Indians. When I tell them that I am from Afghanistan, they remember Kabuliwala. They remember Amitabh Bachchan Khuda Gawaf movie. They talk to me about people, or very famous old characters. Mera naam Abdur Rahman, Peste wala mein hu Pathan. So very unique terms come to discussion, very unique features, people. So that amuses me the most. That gives me a very unique pleasure when I connect with the common Indians and I see the warmth, the gratitude, the affection for Afghans that is beyond explanation and words. Those emotions are nowhere other than India. In terms of music, I like classical music. I like old Indian music. Jagjit Singh Ji is, of course, somebody whom is very much liked in Afghanistan. Fond of listening to his music. One of his famous ghazal, Kagas ki Kishti, Ye Daulat bhi le lo, Ye Shohrat bhi le lo, Bale chhin lo mujhse meri jawani. That is the famous part of the music that I listen to whenever I get a chance.
Ambassador, at the beginning of our interview, you said that All India Radio holds a special place in the minds of the people from Afghanistan. And recently, we at All India Radio enhanced the broadcast of our external services in Dari and Pashto, and the transmission time has almost been doubled. How do you look at this feature and your advice or your inputs in terms of further advancing our approach?
While growing up back in the 90s, early 90s or late 80s, we used to hear a word, Akashwani. So there used to be an announcement at that time that, Ye Akashwani hai. And we sometimes thought that this is Akashwani is a person. It was this visit today to All India Radio, to the studio. There's a history of almost 30 years behind it. And I'm very thrilled, very pleased to eventually come here together with a member of my family. Doubling the time of both our languages, Pashto and Dari, is something that has been welcomed by many people that I have spoken to. Like I said earlier, that India holds a special place in our hearts and minds. We would want greater India's involvement, not only in the political spectrum of our lives, but also in the entertainment, news, current affairs. India has been a strategic partner, as we discussed earlier. So the rightful space should be there when it comes to media, entertainment, news, current affairs, and so on. All India Radio has been doing a very unique job in connecting the two countries in a very unique way. We have very fond memories of people like Mr. Batra. While growing up at that time, we were familiar to his sound. I think it's time that my suggestion to Radio India would be to continue giving time and attention and resources to this section by bringing the right number of people who understand the Afghan culture, the Afghan languages well, and conduct regular survey of the desires or needs of those people by broadcasting the right programs, the right initiatives.
Well, Ambassador, can you share a few words in Hindi for our listeners?
एक आशा थी हमें ये मौका मिले कि ऑल इंडिया रेडियो आए, वो तमन्ना भी आज पूरी हो गई। भारत में हम जिधर भी जाते हैं हमें मोहब्बत मिलती है। ऐसे लोग हैं जो हमारे लिए, खासकर अफगानों के लिए, मोहब्बत से भरे हुए हैं। जब हम काबुली वाले की बात करते हैं तो आपकी चेहरे पे एक मुस्कुराहट आ जाती है। जो हमारे राष्ट्रपति जी कहा करते थे कि जो जगह भारत में हमें रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर जी ने दी है अपनी पोइट्री में, अफगानिस्तान को काबुली वाले की दी है, वो हमें शायद कोई भी मार्केटिंग कंपनी भारत में करोड़ों की रुपया खर्च करने के बावजूद भी नहीं दे पाएगी। हम बहुत ही हिस्टोरिक दोस्त हैं और यही हमारी दुआ रहेगी कि ये दोस्ती हमेशा कायम और दायम रहे।
Well, Ambassador, it has really been a pleasure talking to you, and thanks a lot for sparing your valuable time with All India Radio.
Thank you. आपका भी धन्यवाद।
You were listening to an exclusive interview with Farid Mamundzay, the Ambassador of Islamic Republic of Afghanistan to India. Interviewer was Dr. ATUL TIWARI, AIR Special Correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.